Hello and welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. Today's video going to be we look at the various different permutations of players Rodgers may drop stroke rest for the game against Kilmarnock to try and get the Celtic motivation and energy levels back to the way they should be. Also, we touching on a couple of wee news stories developing relating to Celtic and a couple of our players out on loan as well, Gustav Lagerbielke and Luis Palma. First thing I thought we would have a look at is my own thoughts regarding where Rodgers may go with his team for the game against Kilmarnock on Saturday. The dream was that this would be the game where we would win and guarantee the title, but it does look like the winning of the title, which I'm sure is going to happen, will be delayed at least until the end of Sunday, and probably more likely will be delayed into the first or second game of the post-split fixtures. What I thought would be interesting would be to have a look at one or two of the permutations that Rodgers may go with, which players to drop, which players to move positions, etc. First of all, I do think that Celtic's performances over the last six weeks or so have been very disappointing. We've had rather poor games against Rangers, Hibs and St Johnstone. Main factor with all of those is in all three games we gave up a very early goal, put ourselves on the back foot when we have got off to a good start, particularly if we score an early goal, such as against Aberdeen and Hearts in the league, or in the game against Hibs in the Cup, where we start the game on top. Particularly if we score a goal, we then have been putting those teams away and winning comfortably. Much the same also in the Dundee United match, where we played very well in the first half, scored some early goals, put the pressure on Dundee United, and then coasted a bit in the second half. I think also Rodgers needs to take a lot of the blame for Celtic's downturn in energy levels and commitment and teamwork over recent weeks. He is, after all, the manager. He should really be identifying which players may be looking like they're coasting, which players maybe are looking a wee bit overconfident and complacent, etc. And with his coaching staff, talking to the players, getting them out of that mindset, or if necessary, dropping that player for a week or two just to get their minds focused again, and rewarding players who are showing the necessary commitment. So I do think Brendan Rodgers maybe hasn't faced the amount of criticism that he should have done. A lot of the fans, a lot of the pundits, a lot of the ex-players, a lot of the journalists have kind of heaped all the blame onto the players. But I think Rodgers needs to take his fair share of the blame for things having gone a wee bit off the boil over recent weeks. Now, I think many people would recognise this starting 11 as being our strongest possible 11 as things stand, based on their season's performances, their stats, their ratings, their goals, assists. Obviously, Kasper Schmeichel would normally be the goalkeeper, but Sinisalo is deputising him for another few weeks until Schmeichel's fully fit. So, starting lineup, I think, which would be Celtic's strongest on the season's form and ratings, would be Sinisalo in goals, until Schmeichel is fit again. Alistair Johnson at right back, Carter Vickers and Austin Trusty centre backs, with Jeffrey Sloop on the left. Midfield three of McGregor, Engels, and Hatate, and a front three of Kuhn, Maeda, and Jota. That is, as I said, if all those players are fit, fresh, on form, and mentally the way they should be in terms of commitment, energy, motivation, fight, etc. However, quite a few of those players have kind of gone off the boil recently. A few of the players have been rather inconsistent, some good games, some not so good games. I think the absolute maximum number of changes Rodgers would make for the game against Kilmarnock is 8, and I don't see him actually doing that many changes. However, if he was to pretty much wholesale change the whole team. The three players I think who would be guaranteed to be in the team for next Saturday against Kilmarnock would be Sinisalo in goals, McGregor in midfield, and Dyson Maida either through the middle or out on the left. And so if he was going to make the maximum likely changes, I think it would be Sinisalo, Ralston, Nawrocki, Scales, Taylor, McGregor, McCowan, Paulo Bernardo, Yang on the right, possibly Forrest, depending on Yang's fitness with his elbow injury, and Ida in the middle, and Dyson Maida out on the left. I think certainly another option would be to have a team where it's removing the players who have played a particularly high number of games in the 24-25 season, particularly a couple of players, Alistair Johnson and Cameron Carter-Vickers, who had very little in the way of rest last summer as they went straight from our season into the Copa America, straight from Copa America into the end of our pre-season tours, etc., then into the first fixture of the season against Kilmarnock back in August last year. So I think there are a few players who probably have played a lot more games than others, a few players who've looked a bit tired, a few players who, due to their international commitments, haven't had the same chance to rest and recuperate as some of the others. So if he was to make 7 changes, I could see a team with Sinisalo in goals, Ralston at right back, Nawrocki and Scales as the 2 centre backs, with Jeffrey Sloop on the left, Paulo Bernardo, Luke McCowan, and McGregor in midfield, Forrest on the right, as Yang has played a lot of games both for Celtic, mostly coming off the bench, but also a number of games recently for various South Korean teams. Internationally, Ida in the middle and Dyson Maida. That would be one option, but I think probably too many changes, too many disruptions, too many new partnerships. Another thought would be resting the players who many fans and pundits and ex-players feel have been rather inconsistent just recently. That team would be Sinisalo in goal, Alistair Johnston at right back, Cameron Carter-Vickers at centre back, with Scales replacing Austin Trusty, as a lot of people feel his form is rather inconsistent. Jeffrey Sloop at left back, Callum McGregor in central midfield with Luke McCowan and Paulo Bernardo. I think a lot of fans and pundits feel that Engels and Hatate have been rather in and out in terms of performances and energy levels and commitment. I don't personally share that myself. A lot of folk are really calling for Luke McCowan and Paulo Bernardo to start against Kilmarnock, with Nicholas Kuhn dropping out at right wing to be replaced by Forrest or Yang, Adam Ida through the middle, and Dyson Maida on the left. I think a lot of fans don't feel that Adam Ida has been consistent, and in essence, other than Dyson Maida, we don't have many other options through the middle, other than Johnny Kenny, and I don't see Johnny Kenny getting a start for Celtic at the weekend. However, I do see Rodgers making a number of changes for the game against Kilmarnock on Saturday, and I would not be too surprised if he makes 3 or 4 changes. So my team that I see Rodgers picking for the game against Kilmarnock is Sinisalo in goals, Alistair Johnston, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and either Liam Scales or Austin Trusty as centre backs, Jeffrey Sloop as left back, Callum McGregor in the deeper midfield role. I see both Hatate and Engels dropping out to the bench to be replaced by Paulo Bernardo and Luke McCowan. I think Nicholas Kuhn definitely is going to get dropped on the right wing to be replaced by Forrest or Yang, depending on the fitness levels. I personally would actually go for James Forrest, simply based on his experience. And although he did miss a good couple of chances against St Johnstone at the weekend, at least he was getting himself into the box and he was making quite a bit of progress down the wing when he was getting the ball out wide. I think Adam Ida won't get the start, and Dyson Maida will do, and Jota will have the starting position on the left. However, those are all just speculations. There are many other permutations, and you may have your own personal preference for which you would go for it, so do feel free to pop that into the comment section. As I said, there are a few other wee news stories relating to Celtic. There was the announcement yesterday evening that Alan Muir, the VAR official with the Scottish Refereeing Association, he has in essence been sacked. There were meetings with Willie Collum and Martin Atkinson, who is the VAR head ref. And after that, Alan Muir has now been, in essence, let go by the Scottish Refereeing Association. And so he won't referee any games on the pitch, and he won't be refereeing any games as the VAR main ref or the VAR assistant ref. I think there's little doubt that Muir's performance as a VAR ref was rather poor. That was his very poor decision in the Motherwell Celtic match, where he simply was looking as to whether Dyson Midas' goal should be disallowed or not, and completely ignored the fact that there was a blatant penalty with Maida being pulled down in the box and a probable red card for the Motherwell defender who pulled him down. He faced a lot of criticism for that. The biggest ones, of course, were the penalty, no penalty, when Liam Scales pulled Cherney on the edge of the box. That did lead to a lot of criticism in Scottish footballing press and within the game itself. And then there was the fiasco of the disallowed goal in the Celtic Hibs match, where Alistair Johnson may or may not have got the ball back into play. The assistant referee, who was in a perfect position to say whether it was or it wasn't, he kept his flag down. The referee gave the goal, and on zero conclusive evidence, Muir disallowed the goal, and Celtic ended up losing the game 2-1. After a few weeks, which I suspect was all the various internal disciplinary meetings and rules and regulations and union type things happening, Willie Collum and Martin Atkinson have sacked Alan Muir as one of the 3 full-time VAR officials in Scotland. Interesting speculation that keeps on getting more and more is that Greg Taylor is possibly going to sign for Rangers next season. I personally find that very, very hard to believe. The main people pushing the story forward seem to be ex-Rangers players such as Alan McCoist and Chris Boyd. The Daily Record's less capable journalists and a couple of very poor, in my opinion, poor quality football fan sites. I don't personally see any real way that Taylor will be moving from Celtic to Rangers. I instead think it's much more likely he'll be off to America or the English Championship, as it does appear possibly the route of going to Dinamo Zagreb might be less likely, as they sacked their manager Fabio Cannavaro just yesterday, and so it may be the intent to sign Taylor on a free agency contract might have gone with Cannavaro moving on. A couple of wee bits of stories regarding 2 Celtic players out on loan, both of whom I think are unlikely to be given a chance to re-establish themselves in Celtic squad next season. Lewis Palma, who has been doing very well recently for Olympiacos in Greek football. They're on the verge of the double in Greece. His performances have got better and better week by week, and apparently has been very impressive both for Olympiacos and was very impressive in the recent international break for Honduras. Olympiacos are said to be very, very keen to sign him. There are several other teams lining up to sign him as well. And just recently, Dynamo Kiev in Ukraine have come onto the market, very keen to sign Lewis Palma. And I do think there will be a lot of different clubs looking to sign Palma in the summer. And it may depend on whether there is or isn't a definite clause in his loan deal with Olympiacos as to where he ends up. But I don't see him coming back to Celtic. The other player is Gustav Lagerbielke. According to virtually every pundit and expert and journalist and scouting site in Holland, Lagerbielke has had a brilliant season for 20 Enschede. Just recently, interestingly, there has been one rather outspoken, controversial pundit who is in essence saying Lagerbielke is rubbish and that 20 Enschede shouldn't sign him and are not going to sign him. It does appear that it's one person who's putting forward an opinion. It does appear to have been picked up by a lot of the Celtic sites, football fan sites, and a couple of the Scottish footballing newspapers, but I don't think, personally, looking at Lagerbielke's stats, he's consistently been getting 7s and more out of 10. His season average is 7.2 out of 10, and he has received a number of Man of the Match awards at 20 Enschede this season, and has also been in a couple of the Team of the Week teams for the whole of the Dutch top division. Finally, just a wee congratulation to two ex-Celtic people, Chris Davis, the previous assistant manager under Brendan Rodgers previously, and our ex-player Tomoki Iwata. They both ended up at Birmingham, and Iwata has been very much central to Birmingham's brilliant performance this season. Yesterday, they guaranteed themselves promotion into the English Championships. They also have a 14-point lead at the top of the division and have managed to secure promotion with 6 games to spare. And both Davis as the manager and Iwata as their key midfielder have been receiving a lot of praise from people who have been watching their games closely. So well done to both Chris Davis and Tomoki Iwata. And we'll see how they do in the English Championship next season. That finishes things off for today's video. I'm planning a couple of wee other videos in the next day or two, and of course on Friday or Saturday morning I'll be doing a preview of the Kilmarnock game, which hopefully will get Celtic back on a winning run and within 3 points of winning the Scottish League yet again. As we finish, just a wee polite suggestion, encouragement. If you are new to the channel, not yet subscribed, please do click that subscriber button. Keep the numbers pushing further and further past 1200, and do feel free to pop your own thoughts regarding the possible lineup on Saturday and which players deserve to be dropped, rested, rotated, etc. for the Kilmarnock game to get ourselves back on track and back on winning ways. And so until the next video, goodbye and hail, hail.